Hi there, this is Kalap Samel, your instructor for Foundations of Library Services. This presentation, we're going to focus on acquisitions, collection development, and classification. As library support staff, we should have a basic foundation in library services. And according to ALA's library support staff certification, they identified 10 competencies that makes up the foundation in library services. This presentation will cover one competency, which is competency 5, which covers acquisition, collection development, and current cataloging and classification system. The main objective for this presentation is to identify basic principles of acquisitions, collection development, and current cataloging and classification systems. Acquisitions. The acquisitions of materials in a library means ordering and receiving print and non-print materials. Books and print materials. Books and print materials make up the largest purchases in libraries. They're usually acquired through wholesale book vendors called jobbers. These vendors usually offer greater discounts to libraries. These vendors also offer a service called value added service, sometimes abbreviated as VAS. Value added service basically means they have processed a book ready to be shelf ready. And this includes the cataloging, the physical processing, and such. It's ready to be shelf ready. Example jobbers or wholesale book vendors are Brodart, Ingram, Follett, Baker and Taylor, Book Wholesalers, Inc. Some specialty titles do require libraries to buy them directly from their publishers also. But overall, books and print materials make up the largest purchases in library. Non-print materials that are physical items include books on CDs and musical CDs, DVDs, Blu-rays, and example vendors of non-print materials that are physical items is Recorded Books, Tantor Media, Library Video Company. Non-print materials that are considered electronic and digital items are usually ebooks, e-audiobooks. And example vendors for these items are Overdrive or Access 360. You can usually purchase or subscribe to the materials from the vendors. Acquisition procedures. This will probably vary depending what type of library you're at and the size of your library, but here's an example acquisition process. The first step is usually receive a request. The second step is the bibliographic verification. This is a process whereby items to be ordered are carefully checked to make sure they exist, are in print, and can be acquired. So a typical library staff will check the library catalog and various library catalogs to see if it exists. They'll check to see if it's owned, on order already, or in process and repair, so there won't be duplicate orders. They'll then next place the order. And placing the order could be on the vendor's website, through fax or phone order. And there's various methods of acquisition. There could be considered a firm order, a standing order, approval plan, gifts, and exchange. The fourth step is prepare for the receipt. The fifth step is to receive the items, such as unpacking the box, finding the packing slip, checking the packing slips against the contents, item for item, check the shipment itself against the order form to make sure what was received was what was ordered and vice versa. And lastly, process materials if it isn't done by the vendors. Do note that it's possible to outsource the entire acquisition function from the library. And for certain library, it is more cost effective to outsource the whole acquisition function. Collection development. A library's objective is to serve the informational needs of its user. The purpose of collection development is to select materials that serve the needs of the primary service population. This service population will vary by library type and community and relies on the demographics of that community to determine what choices the library makes. Um, Demographics is basically the characteristics of a human population. So collection development select materials that serve the needs of the primary service population or demographic. The library's selection policy usually guides collection development. Selection policy is necessary in order to provide guidance for the librarian or library support staff who do collection development. And possible guideline criteria in a section policy are the positive reviews, reputation of an author, local interests, the demand from the library users, and budget limitations. These are just some of the criteria, not all of the criteria. Sources of those positive reviews can come from a variety of places. For popular professional review journals, it can include such journals as Publisher Weekly, Booklist, Library Journal, School Library Journal, Kirkus Reviews, and Choice. For popular websites, there's such sites such as read.gov, Fictional Booklist, and Novelists. And similar to acquisition, collection development or the selection policy or selections, material selection, can be outsourced by a vendor just because they can analyze the library's usage to determine what the library demographics information need may be. Local interest purchase may be something that the library has to do if they do outsource their collection development or selection material selection, just because vendors don't have the extra information about local interests. Classification systems. A classification system is the numerical or alphabetical system a library uses to organize materials by subject. Classification systems basics. So classification systems provide the arrangement of material on a shelf in a logical order, making it easy for patrons to find that for which they are searching for. Classification system plus the author designation equals unique notation that becomes the location symbol or call number. And a call number is basically the address or where the item lives on the shelf or the library shelves. And in the library world, two popular classification systems used in U.S. libraries are the Dewey Decimal System and the Library of Congress system. The Dewey Decimal System is used primarily in public libraries and in the K-12 school libraries. It divides knowledge into 10 main class and further divides it in the 100s and then even thousands. For example, the 500 is the broad category of pure science. And then to be more specific, the 540s encompass chemistry. And then to be even more specific, 546 encompass inorganic chemistry. So it divides knowledge to categories, kind of like broad subjects, and then further narrows it down to more narrow subjects, and it goes all the way into the decimal point, which is why the Dewey Decimal System. Library of Congress classification, also known as LC, is used primarily in academic and special libraries. Remember, academic and special libraries tend to have either more items or they have more items in a particular area. So the Library of Congress classification system, they divide knowledge into 21 broad categories using a letter to represent each category or subject field. So for example, in LC, the H represents social science. It's further a subdivider as a subclass of the category social science is HF, which represents commerce. And then it can be further subdivided by adding a combination of letters and numbers. So for example, the call number HF5415 is for business and marketing, which is a subset of commerce, the subclass HF, which is a subset of social science, the category H. And because the Library of Congress allows for more or greater specificity, academic libraries with the bigger collections and special libraries with the greater collection in a particular area will tend to use the Library of Congress more. It avoids possible duplication of the same Dewey Decimal call number. Moving on to online library catalog and MARC. So we focused a little bit on the different classification systems. Now we're going on to cataloging in the sense of online library catalog and MARC. So an online library catalog is basically an electronic bibliographic database that describes the books, videotapes, periodicals, and etc. carried by a particular library. MARC, on the other hand, is the thing that creates records that can be read by computers, and in turn, the computer displays the bibliographic record in a manner that people can understand. MARC is the computer language that translates the physical card catalog records in a format that a computer can read and display in an online library catalog. So basically, catalogers create MARC records, which in turn becomes bibliographic record in an online library catalog that makes it more easier for library users to search for things. I hope that makes sense. But if you look at the images on the slide, the top part is the MARC record. That's the record that catalogers create and enter into the cataloging system. And in turn, the online catalog takes that MARC record and then translates it and create it into a bibliographic record that makes it easier for librarians, other LSS and library users to understand that record of, oh, this is the book, it is by this person this year, and it is located in this area. All right. There's other methods of classification. So we briefly talked about the Dewey Decimal and Library of Congress, and then we talked about how catalogers create MARC records, which then can be translated and readable in online catalogs. If you're going to be working in cataloging or you're going to work with catalogers, you may hear something such as SUDOC, which is basically another classification system used for government documents. So if you're going to be working in archives or a government doc depository, this is something that you may be exposed to. If you're working in the medical hospital or medical library, you might hear the National Library of Medicine classification, which is more for medical and scientific materials, and this is used internationally. And the cutter is something that's kind of like can be used in the Dewey Decimal and Library of Congress too, but basically it's just part of the call number that represents the author's last name to help with further organizing the material. So you might hear of these things or see of these things if you're going to be working in cataloging or with cataloging. So in summary, libraries serve their users or their demographics. Therefore, they select materials that reflect the interests and needs of their demographics, hence the collection development. Then they acquire it through the acquisition process, and then they arrange it physically through the classification system, and they catalog it through MARC in a manner that makes it easy to understand and easy to locate. As library support staff, we must understand how libraries serve their users and also the workflows and process behind it, such as collection development, acquisition, and the classification system. Thank you very much. And here's the reference I used for this presentation. I hope you understand acquisition, collection development, and the classification system a little better.